welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Nate Payne.
And today we are about to watch Exorcist II, or The Exorcist II, and I have never seen it before.
I really want to know your expectations. It's just called Exorcist II, The Heretic.
Okay, so I have very low or zero expectations because it's not on my radar, and it hasn't been, and so I'm not sure why. It's not that I've heard bad things or anything. It's just not something that I've been I've been trying to seek it out. And so, do you want to say anything about that?
I do not. I just wanted to get that recorded so that afterward we can hear more.
Okay, so we're about to watch the movie, and we will come back with our thoughts. Hello, we are post Exorcist II, The Heretic, and I cannot wait to talk to you about this.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
So a few facts. This movie came out in 1977. It's 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm glad I didn't know that going in. I mean, I guess it didn't matter, right? It had a budget of $14 million, but if you consider inflation, that's equivalent to $58 million today.
That is insane. That is it. I mean, if you just look at the sets and the amount of globe trotting and all that stuff, it's insane.
I was reading a little bit about what critics said, and Leonard Maltin, he said it's like one of the worst movies ever made. But the special effects are great.
Well, yeah, and I think that if you take out the ridiculous, basic plot points, there is, an interesting story in there somewhere.
Yeah. So, okay, it made $30 million at the box office. I noted, right when it started, I'm like, 1977, this is the year Star Wars came out. And you had an interesting anecdote about that.
Yeah, so this movie came out, and they were expecting this to be the gangbuster movie of the summer because it's the sequel to The Exorcist, and then Star Wars was nothing. It was this little nothing space movie, but then obviously we know how it turned out, so.
And the reputation of the first Exorcist movie, I mean, it won, or at least it was up for all these Academy Awards and considered the best or one of the best. Oh, yeah, it won. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, and it had this amazing cast. I mean, Louise Fletcher, I always think of her from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Flowers in the Attic, so she's always a bad guy to me, so I didn't know if I could trust her right away.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, and then you have Max von Sydow back. And James Earl Jones.
And then Richard Burton. The cast is amazing. And a couple things I read about that, too. Well, first of all, Max von Sydow, he actually gets to look his age in this movie, because when they filmed The Exorcist 4 years prior, they had to make him look older. And now he's looking young in his flashbacks.
Yeah, and then everything about this movie. So I love it. It's one of my favorite so bad it's good movies.
Yeah. I read that Linda Blair agreed to be in this movie only if she didn't have to put on any makeup, special effects makeup. And so they double cast or as her double, but the girl doesn't look anything like her.
I know, you'd think they could have found someone that vaguely resembled Linda Blair, but nope. You're right. She doesn't even resemble her at all.
The cast, just seeing their names blew me away. I was like, holy crap. And then the unsettling music in the beginning, it set me up. And then the first girl burning, I got literal goosebumps. It was like, this is so creepy, and what's going to happen? But then it cuts to a tap dancing sequence.
I love that so much. The guy the tap dancing. And then they head into the beehive psych place.
Yes.
The clinic.
Now, this tap dancing sequence is like my high school dream, because I was always a dancer and I loved tap dancing. And if some guy was improvising on his saxophone, that would have been my jam. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe a lot.
Just a random scene in there, though. They're like, let's have Linda Blair tap dance.
Did you say she had to learn for this movie?
Yeah, in the interview with her on the Blu-ray, she talks about how she absolutely hated having to learn tap dancing, but then she did say that now, looking back on it, she appreciates it, but she freaking hated it.
That's interesting. So this therapist's office, we're noting everything is clear, like everything has windows, and you can see out and into everybody's office or sleeping quarters, and it's like a hive, like a colony. And it's like, it's supposed to be futuristic or something. I don't know, but what the heck is going on?
I don't know. It is it's odd. There's no privacy whatsoever, and it seems like the rooms are just like slapdash. Like some are offices, some are activity rooms, and then there's a few with like beds in them. Like what?
And then that big hexagon going around in the background, like you mentioned.
Yes, it just rolls past. Well, and then they're like terribly, terribly dangerous new technology that apparently has never been tested. The synchronizer.
So this is the plot point that, like, as you mentioned, if this had just been changed, you know, I don't know, it would have been better. It could take it more seriously or something. Yeah. But it's like hypnosis / what?
They sync together. It psychically links them through them both becoming hypnotized together. Yeah, when so for those of you listening, it's this bright light that pulsates, and it starts out fast, and the first person has to like relax their tone to get it deeper, and they get as deep as they can, and then they have to bring the other person into their tone. And it's insane and totally based on science, I'm sure.
I mean, it sounds like, as you were describing it, it sounds sexual. And it's...
Deeper, Father.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I mean, hypnosis already is on the verge of, like, some people don't believe in it. And we're already letting ourselves get into this world of, like, demon possession and stuff. But then they just take it to another place.
Yeah, this movie could benefit from some subtlety, I think. Like I said before, I mean, there is an interesting story in there. Like, the idea that she is, like, the next step in humanity and is some kind of savior. And that's why Pazuzu targeted her. Because that's, like, James Earl Jones, you know? He's the good locust.
So this, right after this scene, there's a fire in the basement, yes. And they walk past a fire extinguisher, as you mentioned, and then he's trying to put out the fire with a crutch.
Yep, he grabs the crutch, and then Jean Tuskin, the doctor, is like, I'm going to call the fire department. And she runs, you can presume that she runs past the fire extinguisher to call them. And then when the whole entire basement is on fire, she shows back up with the fire extinguisher as he's still, like, spreading the fire with the crutch. It's so... And then also he resembles the face that Reagan drew. Yes. Yeah, when she asked the kid, like, what do you want me to draw for you? And the kid's like, a house. And she's like, houses are stupid. I'm going to draw you a face. And it's this priest on fire.
Yeah, great. You know, they were shooting these scenes at this apartment in New York City. And I was like, wait a minute, how could they afford this? But then you reminded me, and I remembered her mother's an actress, so I guess they could. But I was looking about the movie, and the actual address for the place is 666 Fifth Avenue. It's the actual roof of the Warner Brothers studio.
Oh, I did not know that. So they must have somebody go clean the bird poop off the Dove boxes. Like,
I know, those are super fancy.
Everything's so shiny and chrome. It's like the movie was desperate to be set in a more modern time than what the last one was, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, there's... I was reading John Boorman, the director, and Max von Sydow both viewed the first movie as, like, a child abuse movie. And then with this one, they wanted to do the opposite, so that's why they kind of flipped, where it's more about Reagan being, like, good, which is fun.
Yeah. You mentioned shiny and chrome, and I just rewatched Mad Max Fury Road recently, so I have to put a plug in there for that movie because I love it.
Yes. Oh, like I was talking before, the sets. I mean, how about rebuilding the Exorcist steps?
Yes, I saw it. Washington, D.C. would not give them permission to film there again. Like,
that was the thing?
yeah,
because they do go back in the third movie.
they would not give them
they
permission.
had to blow it up. A spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I was like, wow. Yeah, the sets. I mean, that's where that budget comes in.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the cast.
Yeah, and okay, so another part of the big budget, apparently, was that they had real locusts. They imported 2,500, which that doesn't sound like an exorbitant amount, but apparently it is, because they were dying at a rate of 100 per day, and they'd have to replace them.
I bet that smelled super gross. I used to have a lizard, and I would keep, the crickets, and oh man, they reeked. So I can imagine 2,500 slowly. Ugh.
Yes. Okay, so then the next thing I wrote, I don't know like how quickly it happened because I stopped taking notes at one point, but there's the tap dance sequence now, and then she's linked up with this priest because of this hypnosis machine, and so she's experiencing what he's experiencing. But I appreciated the tap dance because it was like real choreography that somebody would do maybe at like a high school level, and it wasn't like this insane routine that nobody would ever actually do. So I like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty realistic, and I mean that makes sense too with her. I wonder how much of the fact that she hadn't done tap dancing went into being like, okay, this is what you have to do because you're a beginner. Right. I don't know. That might be a stretch.
Yeah, no, I appreciated it. And then he's this whole thing in Africa. You said I haven't seen the third movie, but it takes place. Is it based on that? The prequel, is it based on this story that they're talking about?
The prequel that takes place in Africa has nothing to do with this. Both Exorcist III and the prequel ignore this movie entirely. And also, did you know there are 2 prequels that are both made from the same script? No. Ooh. Yeah, so that's a whole different story we'll have to talk about one day. But there are 2 different, completely directed by different people, same actors, some of the same script, some of it not. Like, it's crazy.
I had no idea. Now, who directed this, and what else has he done?
John Boorman directed it, and he has done a few major movies. So he is known for Point Blank, Deliverance, Zardoz, Excalibur. So I mean, he's known for a lot of things. Those are the well-known ones.
Now, you mentioned with the version we watched was the original theatrical release, and I saw just in some little research that it did, like, people were laughing at the premiere or at the release of this, and one of the people who was laughing the hardest apparently was the director from the first movie.
Yeah, he really hated it. If I'm thinking correctly, this cut was in the theater for about a week. Wow. And then, they had Boorman come in and edit it down to a shorter cut that has like a recap of the first movie at the beginning. It just cuts out huge chunks of the movie with no real explanation. So there's like things that pop up out of nowhere, a lot more dialogue that makes even less sense because it just kind of cuts between things. And then the ending is completely hacked off.
Wow. That's fascinating to me. And then you said there is also like a longer version, like a director's cut, or what is it? What do they call it?
There's like an assembly cut, I think is what it would be. But yeah, it's a rumored. There's like a 2.5-hour cut, and you can find online like somebody put together like as best as they could to make it the full thing. So, but yeah, it's super long.
Wow. Now tell us why you love this movie. Or do you love to hate it, or what is your feelings about it?
I love this movie, but I'm a huge fan of camp and ridiculousness. So while I definitely believe it is a terrible movie, I actually do think there are some good ideas in it. Like, the more I watch it, the more I appreciate what they were going for. But it is an easy movie and a fun movie to laugh at, for sure. I I think I love it because it's an unintentional comedy that really just works for me. Also, fun fact, I have the special edition Blu-ray, and Jansen bought it for me specifically to bring to Crypticon and see if I can get Linda Blair to sign it.
And you have to tell everybody what you're maybe going to get her to write.
I need her to write "Call Me by My Dream Name."
Pazuzu. Yes. I could not believe it. Like, James Earl Jones, and he was Darth Vader in the same year. Like, yeah, so cool.
Yeah, that hadn't even occurred to me. That's crazy. Well, and how he shows up. What is he wearing?
Oh, it's like a giant bug costume, right? I mean, he looks like a big grasshopper or something.
Yeah, he's dressed in a locust outfit. Yeah. Well, and then they just abruptly cut to him in his like scientist outfit. So I've never quite been able to like figure out exactly what we're supposed to think, but I mean, obviously it's his like dream version, and then he wakes up standing there in the locust research facility in the Mud Hut village.
Yeah. I don't know. And my goodness, Richard Burton wasn't given a moment to smile in this movie. He was serious the entire time.
That's another thing. He was miserable while making the movie.
Oh,
he was completely miserable, and he was reading cue cards almost the whole time, which is why he almost never makes eye contact with anybody.
Well, I didn't realize that. The other thing I noticed, I think they said this about the first movie too. Like some people felt like the set or the movie was cursed. Louise Fletcher and another actress both had gallbladder infections during the filming of this movie. The director had some sort of infectious virus, something. They had to postpone filming for a month while he was recovering, and that set their budget back a bunch. And like a bunch of other people were sick. So, and like weird things.
I did not know about any of that. That's pretty cool.
And how did two people get gallbladder infections at the same time? Like, it's not like it's contagious.
Right? That's a good question. I've always been really into the whole entire Exorcist series. I love, like, underrated or crazy sequels to these classic movies. Like, the Psycho is another really good example. Like, it's one of those movies where I think people don't even realize there are sequels until they suddenly find out there are multiple sequels.
And Psycho 2 is really good. I love it.
Yeah, Psycho 2 is really good. And have you seen the third one?
I'm halfway through the third one. So I shouldn't say I love it or hate it yet because I'm only halfway. But I was blown away.
Yeah. Well, and then the fourth one too, which is a prequel. It's interesting, especially if you've seen Bates Motel, because Olivia Hussey plays a very different character.
Well, I'm excited. We'll have to talk about these then as well. There's never a lack of things to talk about on Horror Rewind.
Yep.
What else do you want to say about Exorcist the Heretic?
Poor Sharon.
Oh. Yes, poor Sharon. My God. I mean, she had a rough time the entire movie, and then she gets burned alive, and her like burnt corpse is being held by Louise Fletcher at the end, and she just perishes.
Well, and once again, Louise Fletcher is like, I don't know how to handle fire, because she sits there and waits for Sharon to burn for like, I mean, they cut away from it and have a whole entire scene, and they cut back and it's like more fires, so it's like 5 minutes, and then she starts begging for help.
Yeah.
And then poor Sharon is briefly still alive at the end.
Oh, God.
Burned and just not okay.
I love there was this scene when Sharon was burning and Louise Fletcher, she just like keeps reaching out her hands kind of like to touch near the flame. It's like, no, that's not good. If there was a crutch, maybe.
Yeah, they needed a crutch. Yes, absolutely.
But there were the locust scenes were well done. I mean, it was pretty cool to see those swarms. I don't know if I loved the close-up of, like, flying on Pazuzu, like those scenes, but...
The literal fly on the wings of a locust. Yeah. Like, that's the problem with this movie. There are a lot of things that sound like they should be metaphors, and then they actually just show them. And like I said, the movie is not subtle. It's insanely ambitious, and it just is a very expensive, very epic, insane roller coaster ride of a dump.
The other thing that we noticed, and you pointed it out, they keep being too honest, how did you put it?
Nobody has boundaries. Yeah. They overshare. Yeah. Like when he comes in and so there's this temple that you can only get to by climbing the most treacherous possible mountain, and unless you're the one guy with the elevator chair. Yeah. But he goes up there, and immediately, so he asks the guy, have you seen this priest with a boy back many years ago? And the other guy's like, a man fell down this cliff and is dead, but we don't know where he is. And they go down and find him, and then they just, leave. There are so many strange people just walking into rooms, like Reagan at the beginning. What's the matter with you?
Yeah. You can't ask somebody what's the matter with them. And the girl's like, I'm autistic. What's the matter with you? Oh, I was possessed by a demon.
It's fine. He's gone now.
Yeah. And then, oh, yeah, too, he was like, oh, I flew on the wings of the demon. He just tells people that.
Yeah, there's no one asked. He just walks in. He's like, hey, it's kind of, yeah.
I noticed that the writer was a playwright. So I wonder, not that playwrights can't write great screenplays, but I just wonder if it was a different approach. And I also saw he based it on the experiences of an actual priest.
I had no idea about that. Just the sets alone, I feel like the movie does feel very theatrical.
Yeah, and maybe some of the dialogue too. And maybe even the literalness of the dialogue. Sometimes in theater you have to do that because you can't show it necessarily like they could in the movie. I don't know. I'm making excuses for it now.
Yeah, well, and like I said, it's an ambitious film, and they way overshot the mark.
Yeah, I just want to hug it, Exorcist II. It's okay, yeah. So I read it. It's critically considered the worst of the Exorcist films, and some people say one of the worst movies ever made. I don't know if I'd go that far.
Like I said, I do think there's a lot to like about it. But, when I first saw it, all I did was laugh at it, and I was like, this is the stupidest movie ever. But like I said, the more I watch it, the more I appreciate what they were doing. But yeah, it is not a good movie, and I would not give it a good review.
Okay. I appreciate some of the things I wrote down. I like the 70s fashion, and I know it just was the time, but I love how they kept putting Linda Blair in white dresses, and even the one time she was wearing sort of a pink dress, she had a white hat, and everything was reminiscent of those pajamas from the first movie.
Yeah, and she's so pure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one major thing that I really appreciate about the second movie. So in the first one, we really don't get to see Reagan at all. We see her a little bit at the beginning. We know she likes horses and Ouija boards, and really that's all we know. She's the demon the whole movie. And in this movie, we actually get to learn a lot about Reagan and see her as a character. And I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. And I didn't realize it was her tap dancing in the beginning. Maybe they said her name. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But so I didn't realize it was her until she was in the therapist's office. And that makes sense as a major plot point, is that she's seeing a therapist, because I can only imagine.
Yeah, and she's seeing a special therapist with the synchronizer. Oh, and when they steal it, and she and the priest steal the synchronizer and take it to the most seedy hotel in New York. Yeah. I don't know. There's some kind of symbolism in this movie regarding, and it feels sketchy.
Yeah, there's some shady things, and I wonder if they made that movie today, would certain things be changed? I don't know.
I know that if they made it today, they would need to cast Nicolas Cage as Father Lamont. I get that vibe so hard from him.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's a great, I love that casting choice. I don't know anybody else who I would immediately cast, but I love that.
Yeah, he's so odd. Yeah. So odd. Well, and it's Richard Burton, so you kind of expect a lot, but you can tell he's, half the movie he is literally sleepwalking.
Yeah, true. Good point. Yeah, I just kept thinking, wow, he doesn't smile. He has just a miserable look on his face the entire time.
Yeah, he just walks into the office of the lady, and he's like, what did she when she was like, "Have you ever needed a woman?"
Oh yeah.
And I can't remember what he said to her, but it was, again, out of nowhere, just like this weird, brief kind of romantic tension thing that goes nowhere and is never brought up again.
Right. I know. I feel like there were several things that I don't know why they were included in the plot because they didn't have anything to do with the plot. And I mean, it's character development maybe, but a lot of things just didn't make sense. Oh, Exorcist II. I'm just going to hug you again.
Right. I know.
Well, unless you have anything off the top of your head, let's rank this on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie. And what is our scale going to be? I mean, I think locusts, but...
Locusts or pity hugs?
Yeah, let's pity hug a locust. Out of 0 to 10, how many do you give it?
No, you go first.
Okay. I'm giving it a 4. I don't hate it, but I'm giving it a 4 pity hugs, this locust. Yeah. What would you give it?
I think if I were rating based just on Locust, like quality of the movie, like a 2. But for fun and pity hugs, I would also give it a 4. Like, and 2 of those are definitely like, oh, you poor thing. Like, you get 2 more.
Yes. Okay, good. We're hugging the locust, and I'm so sorry. Exorcist II. Yeah.
Good try.
Good for you. I was wondering if I asked when we were watching it if anybody's done fan art to replicate her art in the movie. I mean, her art's pretty cool. That would be fun to have, like, recreations of a couple of those pictures.
Yeah, I know. I want to say she did them, but I don't know if that's true.
Okay. That's cool. It's an interesting art style, so I liked it. I would hang like the picture of him with the flames and that picture of her when she imitates the look when she gets out of bed. I would hang those, somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many non sequiturs in there. Oh, and there are like that at the clinic. How there's tchotchke everywhere, and there's a scene where she just like randomly picks up a dove and holds it in her hand and like looks toward the camera, holding this dove, and then just puts it back down. Like there's no explanation for why she like gives this dramatic look. It's like non sequitur city.
So in that too, I wondered, like the Warner Brothers roof. I wonder if it really is all those reflective surfaces, or did they dress the set to look like that? And I kept wanting to like her reflection to be evil Reagan, but they didn't do anything with that. And so then it was like, okay, but what's the purpose? Like, is it on purpose?
The reflection thing, just in general, there are so many reflective things in the movie that, like, purposeful reflective surfaces, and yeah, I could see, that just being a general theme. The brushing of the wings reflected in, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, and the other person I'm going to give a pity hug to is the poor cab driver who's just dying.
Yes, he dies and is completely forgotten. Like that poor man. And he's terrified to go there too. Yeah. They're like 8 Prospect Street and he's like, what?
And the poor bus driver just trying to eat his sandwich.
Yes. And then Richard Burton's just like, get going, she has to go home. And the guy gives him this sad look like, well, fine, I guess I'll do my job then.
Yeah.
Without my sandwich.
Don't we all just want to eat some lunch sometime? So, yes. Anything else you want to say about Exorcist II?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm glad that you watched it, and I'm glad that you went in blind. I think that was my happiest thing.
No, that I think I appreciate that. I had no idea. I didn't know if it was going to blow me away and be the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And it was, but not in the way I hadn't expected.
Yeah, I will say the third one now is, personally, I think it's better than the original, but we'll have to talk that.
That will be the next movie we'll talk about. So until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Thanks.